Most people never realize this until it's too late. Someone can walk into your life, talk to you sweetly, charm your family, make you feel special, and still be playing a psychological game so old and manipulative that it comes straight from the writings of Niccolò Machiavelli. These tactics are still used today, especially on women who enter relationships with trust, emotion, and good intentions. And the scariest part is that the person using these tricks may not even look dangerous. He might look like the kind of guy anyone's parents would approve of, the kind who speaks politely, helps carry groceries, listens carefully, and pretends to care deeply. But behind that calm smile can hide a playbook designed to control emotions, create dependency, and shape your choices without you ever noticing it happen. Before you assume this topic is about villainizing men or creating fear, stay with me. Because this video isn't about blaming. It's about understanding human nature, understanding dark psychology, and recognizing what manipulative people do so you can protect yourself. Women often ignore red flags not because they are weak or naive, but because society teaches them to be accommodating, patient, forgiving, and polite. That cultural pressure, especially in India and South Asia, can make it even easier for a Machiavellian personality to slip through the cracks. When someone uses emotion as a weapon, trust becomes the target. And unless you know how these tricks work, you can easily get caught in cycles that drain you emotionally, mentally, and even socially. Here's why you should keep listening. By the end of this video, you will understand the psychology behind Machiavellian manipulation, how charm becomes a mask, how emotional pressure becomes control, and how subtle tactics like guilt, flattery, and selective silence can shape your decisions more than you realize. You will learn how to identify these patterns early, how to break free from them, and how to protect yourself without becoming cold or distrusting. You will see how everyday interactions, like him asking where you are every hour, or giving you attention only when it benefits him, or making you feel guilty for having boundaries, are not random behaviors but strategic moves used by high-control personalities. This knowledge doesn't just help you in romantic relationships. It protects you at work, in friendships, and even within your own family. Understanding Machiavellian traits makes you sharper, more aware, and more confident. It gives you an inner compass that can detect manipulation long before it harms you. Instead of doubting yourself, you start trusting your instincts. Instead of feeling confused by someone's mixed signals, you start seeing the pattern clearly. Instead of questioning your own worth because someone is treating you badly, you understand that the problem lies in their psychology, not yours. Think of this as turning on the lights in a dark room. When everything is dark, even the smallest shadow can look terrifying. But when the light switches on, you see things for what they truly are. That is what this video will do for you. It takes complicated psychological strategies and breaks them down into simple, relatable examples. Whether you've met such a person in college, in your office, or through relatives, the clarity you gain today will help you navigate relationships with confidence and emotional strength. So take a deep breath and stay with me as we expose the tactics, decode the mindset, and uncover the truth behind Machiavellian manipulation. And remember, the goal of this video is not to create fear. It is to create awareness. When you understand how these psychological tricks work, no one can control your emotions without your permission. If you are ready, let's begin with the first tactic. The first Machiavellian trick used to manipulate women is the tactic of selective charm. This is not ordinary charm or genuine affection. It is a highly controlled performance designed to create a strong first impression and to immediately lower your psychological defenses. Men with Machiavellian traits know that if they can make you feel special early on, you will subconsciously give them more benefit of the doubt later. They often appear extremely attentive, respectful, and supportive, especially during the first stages of a relationship. You might notice how he compliments you more than necessary, remembers small details you mentioned once, or behaves like the perfect gentleman in front of your friends and family. In Indian and South Asian settings, this can be even more impactful, because women are culturally encouraged to value polite, well-spoken men who seem emotionally mature. For example, imagine you meet someone in college who begins by offering help with assignments, bringing you chai between classes, or sending good morning messages every day. This may feel sweet and considerate, and it might even be. But a Machiavellian personality uses this as groundwork. He builds an initial emotional credit so later, when his behavior becomes inconsistent, you are more forgiving. The psychology behind this is simple. Humans tend to trust patterns, and when the early pattern is kindness, your mind struggles to accept later red flags. You think he must be stressed, or busy, or going through something, rather than considering manipulation. The safest way to protect yourself is to stay observant. Enjoy the attention, but do not let it blind you. Watch whether his actions stay consistent over time, or whether the charm fades once he feels he has secured your trust. The second common tactic is strategic vulnerability. This is one of the most misunderstood forms of manipulation because vulnerability is not a bad thing. Real emotional sharing builds deeper bonds. But Machiavellian manipulators use vulnerability as a calculated trap. They reveal personal stories, emotional wounds, or traumatic experiences very early in the relationship, not to create genuine closeness but to trigger your empathy. Women, especially in cultures where caretaking is valued, often respond strongly to emotional pain. A man may share stories of a difficult childhood, a betrayal by an ex, or feeling unappreciated by his family. But the timing and intensity are unnatural. Instead of gradually opening up, he overshares suddenly, creating emotional weight that makes you feel responsible for his well-being. Picture a scenario where a guy you recently met tells you how he was cheated on, abandoned, or mistreated. He might say he doesn't trust easily, yet he feels safe with you. These words activate your emotional instincts and make you want to comfort him. But the purpose is not healing. It is conditioning. Once you begin to feel protective, he can use emotional pressure to influence your decisions. If you ever try to set boundaries later, he may remind you of his pain or imply that you are hurting him like others did. Over time, this creates guilt, and guilt is one of the strongest psychological levers used to control behavior. Understanding why this works is crucial. When someone shares vulnerability, your brain releases bonding chemicals. You feel closer, more trusting, and more compassionate. Machiavellian personalities exploit this natural response. To protect yourself, do not ignore your intuition. Notice whether his vulnerability feels natural or theatrical, whether it is about connection or control, whether he shares consistently or only when he needs sympathy or leverage. By recognizing selective charm and strategic vulnerability early, you gain clarity and emotional strength. You avoid falling into relationships where your kindness is used against you, and you develop a clearer sense of who truly deserves your empathy. The third Machiavellian tactic used to manipulate women is emotional uncertainty, also known as intermittent reinforcement. This is one of the most powerful tools in dark psychology because it plays directly with your nervous system and your emotional expectations. In simple terms, he gives attention and affection in unpredictable patterns. One moment he treats you like you are the most important person in his life, and the next moment he becomes distant, cold, or unavailable. This inconsistency creates confusion, and confusion makes you try harder for the moments of closeness. It is the same psychological mechanism used in addictive behavior. When rewards are unpredictable, the mind becomes more attached. In relationships, this can feel like emotional highs and lows that slowly turn into a cycle of dependency. Imagine a situation where he texts you constantly for 2 days, calling you beautiful, talking about the future, saying how much he admires you. And then, without reason, he disappears for a day or two, leaving you anxious, wondering what you did wrong. When he finally returns with a sweet message or an apology, the relief you feel makes the connection feel stronger, not weaker. Many women, especially in India and South Asia, interpret this as passion or moodiness, not manipulation. Social conditioning teaches women to be patient, understanding, and forgiving. But emotional inconsistency is not a sign of intensity. It is a strategy. By keeping you unsure, he gains control over your emotional stability. Psychologically, intermittent reinforcement activates your brain's reward system in irregular intervals. When attention comes after a period of silence, it feels more meaningful, even though it is actually being used to maintain control. The safest way to protect yourself is to watch for patterns. Consistency is a basic foundation of healthy relationships. If someone constantly swings between warm and cold behavior, it is not your job to stabilize them. You cannot build anything lasting when the ground beneath you keeps shifting. Emotional uncertainty is a trap, not a test of love. The fourth Machiavellian tactic is the use of subtle power plays. Unlike overt dominance or aggression, these tactics are quiet, polite, and socially invisible, which makes them far more dangerous. A manipulator does not raise his voice or make dramatic demands. Instead, he uses small psychological nudges to take control. He may discourage you from spending time with certain friends by hinting they are a bad influence. He may question your choices in a way that seems caring but slowly limits your independence. He may compare you to other women in subtle ways that make you feel insecure or competitive. These actions are not loud enough to be recognized as manipulation, but they slowly shape your decisions, your confidence, and even your identity. Picture a scenario where you are excited to go out with friends, but he says something like, "I don't mind, but I thought you wanted to spend time with me. It's fine, go if you want." On the surface, he is not forbidding you, but the guilt he injects pushes you to change your plans. Another example is when he questions your outfit or your career goals under the disguise of concern. In a culture where many women are constantly told to be mindful of others' opinions, these subtle comments feel normal. But in reality, these are strategic power moves meant to influence your choices without appearing controlling. The psychology behind these power plays is rooted in gradual conditioning. If he can change small decisions, he knows he can later shape bigger ones. The safest way to protect yourself is by paying attention to how you feel after interacting with him. Do you feel supported or drained? Empowered or pressured? Loved or controlled? Your emotional response is often the clearest indicator of hidden manipulation. By recognizing emotional uncertainty and subtle power plays, you start seeing the difference between love and control, between care and coercion. You reclaim the clarity that manipulation tries to steal from you. The fifth Machiavellian tactic used to manipulate women is reality distortion, often called reframing or narrative twisting. This happens when the manipulator subtly rewrites events, conversations, or emotions to make you question your own memory or judgment. It is not always as dramatic as full gaslighting. Instead, it often appears in small corrections and gentle contradictions. He might say things like, "I never said that," or "You are misunderstanding," or "You are too sensitive," even when you clearly remember what happened. Over time, this makes you second-guess your instincts. When your sense of reality becomes shaky, you begin relying more on his version of events, giving him psychological control. Consider a common scenario in Indian or South Asian relationships where a disagreement happens, and instead of discussing the issue, he calmly insists you imagine the tone or overreacted. You might begin to think you are at fault, even when you raised a very normal concern. In a culture where women are often taught to maintain peace and avoid conflict, this tactic becomes even more effective. Slowly, your confidence in your own perception weakens. You may stop bringing up concerns altogether, just to avoid feeling like the dramatic one. The psychological insight behind this is simple. When someone controls the narrative, they control your emotional reality. The only protection is to anchor yourself in self-awareness. Trust what you feel, trust what you saw, and trust what your inner clarity tells you. You do not need someone else to validate your experiences. The sixth Machiavellian tactic is emotional debt. This happens when he reminds you of things he has done for you, not out of love, but as leverage to influence your choices. He may say things like, "After everything I've done for you," or "I supported you when no one else did," or "You wouldn't be here without me." The implication is that you owe him something. Emotional debt turns kindness into currency, and currency into control. In South Asian contexts, where gratitude and reciprocity are deeply embedded in relationships, this tactic becomes extremely powerful. Women may feel guilty for asserting themselves or making choices he disagrees with because they fear appearing ungrateful. Picture a man who helped you with your studies, supported you through a difficult time, or stood by you during a personal struggle. Those actions may have been real, but when he uses them later to restrict your independence or decisions, they lose their meaning. Helping someone does not create ownership. Support is not a contract. Real love does not demand repayment. The psychology behind emotional debt is rooted in power imbalance. Once you accept that you owe him, he can direct your behavior through guilt rather than partnership. To protect yourself, remind yourself that genuine care never comes with conditions. Gratitude should be natural, not forced or manipulated. This brings us to the crucial emotional reinforcement of this entire journey. What you are learning is not meant to make you fearful of relationships. It is meant to give you emotional clarity. When you understand these tactics, you begin to recognize patterns that once confused you. You see that manipulation is not love. Control is not care. Emotional pressure is not intimacy. You start becoming more aware of the difference between healthy affection and psychological strategy. Your self-awareness grows stronger. You stop blaming yourself for the behavior of manipulative people. you stop accepting responsibility for someone else's emotional instability. Most importantly, this knowledge empowers you to build healthier relationships. You choose partners who respect your boundaries, who listen to your feelings, and who remain consistent even when things are not convenient. You learn to walk away from people who drain you, confuse you, or distort your reality. You start valuing your emotional peace as much as your emotional connection. When you understand these subtle forms of dark psychology, you protect not only your heart, but your future. Now that we have exposed these Machiavellian tactics, it becomes clear that manipulation is not always loud, aggressive, or obvious. Sometimes it hides behind politeness, affection, or emotional sharing. Sometimes it wears the mask of care, support, or loyalty. The danger lies not in how dramatic these tactics appear, but in how subtle they are. When they unfold quietly, slowly, and softly, they blend into the relationship so naturally that you barely notice what is changing inside you. Your boundaries shrink a little. Your self-confidence weakens a little. Your voice becomes quieter. And one day you realize that you are no longer making choices for yourself. Someone else has been shaping them all along. This is why awareness is power. When you understand how selective charm works, you no longer fall for the intensity of the first few weeks. When you recognize strategic vulnerability, you stop letting guilt guide your decisions. When you see emotional uncertainty for what it is, you stop confusing inconsistency with passion. When you identify subtle power plays, you no longer allow someone to control you by influencing your insecurities. When you understand reality distortion, you stop doubting your own memory. And when you expose emotional debt, you stop believing that gratitude means obedience. Knowledge dismantles each tactic, piece by piece, until the manipulator's playbook becomes useless. Think about how this understanding affects your life going forward. It protects your heart from relationships that drain your emotional strength. It gives you clarity when you feel confused. It helps you make decisions rooted in self-respect instead of fear or guilt. It also improves your interactions at work, with friends, and within family dynamics. When someone tries to shift blame onto you, you recognize it. When someone uses silence as a tool to control your emotions, you see through it. When someone tries to restrict your independence through subtle comments, you no longer fall into the emotional trap. You become more grounded, more centered, and more aware of the patterns that shape human behavior. The truth is that dark psychology does not disappear just because you ignore it. It only loses power when you understand it. And the intention of this entire video is not to judge or attack anyone, but to give you the mental tools to protect yourself. Relationships become healthier when both people operate with honesty, clarity, and emotional responsibility. If you ever meet someone who uses these Machiavellian tactics, you will now recognize the signs early. You will know when someone's charm is genuine and when it is strategic. You will understand the difference between emotional sharing and emotional manipulation. You will trust your instincts more deeply because you finally know why you feel what you feel. As we close this journey, remember one important thing. Your emotions are not weaknesses. Your kindness is not a flaw. Your empathy is not something to be exploited. These qualities are strengths, but like all strengths, they must be protected. You deserve relationships that bring stability, comfort, honesty, and consistency into your life. You deserve someone who values your voice, respects your boundaries, and loves you without conditions or psychological games. And now, you are far better equipped to identify that kind of relationship. If you found clarity, understanding, or strength in what you heard today, here is my final question for you. Have you ever experienced any of these tactics in a past relationship or seen them happen to someone close to you? Share your experience. Your story might help someone else recognize the signs they have been ignoring. And as always, if you want more videos breaking down human behavior and exposing the hidden patterns of psychology, stay connected, because there is so much more to uncover.